Oh my goodness, this is genuine rage bait. This is actual unironic rage bait, but it looked so funny I couldn't resist. This looks diabolical. This actually looks diabolical. When you walk into a video like this, you know for a fact, like the whole point is just to like piss off a certain group of people, and that's being all of Gen Z. But like, there's gonna be some small things in here that are like that give it a little bit of merit, right? Like my own personal gripe with Gen Z is the cringe culture. Like everything is cringe. You know, we were talking a little bit in the previous videos, like everything's cringe. A lot of people say like club culture is dead, and it's because like apparently Gen Z people don't like dance at clubs anymore or do anything because like they don't want to be seen as weird. And then you take that even further, Gen Alpha now, like in school, like everyone's like terrified of doing anything cringe because everyone has a phone. And it's like you never know when you're going to be recorded. You know what I mean? It's very important to remember how wide Gen Z is. The oldest Gen Z is into their mid to late 20s. Oh, I know. Absolutely. I'm with you. Like I'm technically a millennial. So like obviously early and late is going to be very, very different. And that's why you can't really make sweeping claims like this. But that's why I said it's a 100% a rage bait video, but I think it could be funny. I'm in. Let's go.
Of over 1,000 according to a survey of over 1,000 hiring managers, 74% considered.
This one's a bit louder. Is the volume good on this one, or is it a bit too loud now? I think it's a bit too loud. Let's try this. Is this good?
Difficult generation in the workforce. And despite Gen Z becoming one of the most educated generations in history, nearly half of all managers purposely avoid hiring recent grads, raising the concern, will Gen Z ever be able to meet employers' demands?
Prime, by the way. Appreciate it.
While each generation entering the workforce has faced accusations of being lazy, entitled, or disloyal, the reality behind these labels is often far more complex. As the Harvard Business Review highlights, the US working age population is shrinking at a rate not seen since World War II. With 3 million fewer individuals than millennials, Gen Z's smaller population adds pressure to an already evolving workforce, highlighting the need to examine how the experiences and work habits of previous generations have shaped the modern economy.
Yeah, but you know, you gotta say the quiet part out loud right away. What's the point? Right? Like, what's the point of putting in all these crazy hours for a company that's going to replace you in 2 seconds and you don't have nearly as many opportunities as those who came before you? It's fucking depressing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're not going to work at the same company for 50 years and then get a pension and they're going to, you know, care about you on the way out the door. No, they don't give a fuck, right? So like, no shit, they're not going to give much of a shit about you because you don't give a shit about them because everything's hyper optimized. That's why this is pure rage bait, because it's gonna just be like, oh, these generations before they got so much and they worked hard. Like, no,
generation
they didn't work any harder.
1928 and 1945 grew up in a time of profound uncertainty, shaped by the hardships of the Great Depression and the devastation of World War II. As adults, they helped rebuild a society restructured around the Cold War, fostering a mindset focused on working within the system rather than challenging it. Programs like the GI Bill expanded access to higher education, fostering a workforce that emphasized technical skills, discipline, and steady progression within corporate hierarchies. Their pay your dues mindset not only contributed to the post-war economic recovery, but also bolstered labor unions, securing wages, better working conditions, and the benefits that defined middle-class stability. Despite these achievements, real wages have grown by only 0.7% over the last 50 years, accounting to a 18-cent increase as of February of 2022, where today, Gen Z emerges as the most pro-union generation in decades, echoing the silent generation's fight for economic fairness, but leveraging digital platforms to amplify their calls for higher wages and equitable working conditions. Yet this approach draws criticism from older generations, often perceiving the demands as being entitled.
No, it is good. I'm surprised at that, actually, because I feel like I see way too many people that have the most misinformed against that take.
Lacking patience and sacrifice that once defined the traditional labor movements. As the silent generation transitioned into leadership roles throughout the 70s and 80s, their emphasis on structure and discipline helped shape the professional environment and laid the groundwork for the modern workforce today. However, their loyalty-driven work culture frequently clashed with the ambitions of baby boomers, whose priorities reflected a very different set of societal and economic conditions. Baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, grew up in vastly different circumstances compared to their parents.
Uh-oh.
Early boomers, raised by the greatest generation, inherited values of sacrifice and
Early
hard
boomers.
work, but rejected the materialism and conformity of their upbringing. By the 1960s and 70s, they led a cultural shift challenging the organization man mindset that prioritized loyalty to employers over personal fulfillment, an attitude echoed by Gen Z today. Although later boomers, influenced by their silent generation parents, lean more towards stability and working within the system, economic challenges in the 1980s, including high inflation, soaring interest rates, and stagnant wages, blurred these distinctions, resulting in boomers averaging 10 jobs by the age of 34, practically switching jobs every year from 18 to 24, far surpassing millennials and Gen Z at the same age. Similarly, despite being framed as disloyal, 70% of Gen Z workers cite salary competitiveness as the driving force behind frequent job changes.
Well, I mean, yeah, the best way to get a raise is to change jobs. Because, like, most companies have a budget set for new hires, have a budget set for existing hires. And so the budget for new hires is very large because they want to attract new good talent. But they don't actually give much of a fuck about the current talent because they're already there. They already have them. They own them, right? And that they believe, in a lot of ways, by having a good culture, making sure that they're happy, you know, giving them a pizza party, that will get them to stay more than giving them extra money. And so what ends up happening is you say, hey, I want a raise to your boss. And they'll say, sorry, it's not in the budget. And then you look at a job at your company for someone who's getting the same job as you. And the starting salary is posted and it's higher than yours. And you're like, what the, like, how is a new person going to come in and they're getting paid more than me, but I have like 3 years of experience here? That don't make no sense. And so the best way to actually increase your pay is to constantly job hop. Like, you stay somewhere a year, maybe two, most, and then you move. Because like when you go to the next, like your current job will give you a 2, 3, 4% raise, but you could go somewhere else and get a 20% raise or 30% raise or a title bump too, like a 10% raise and a title bump. Then you stay there a year and then you go to the next one. You get a 20% raise off the title bump for the next company. You know what I mean?
Reflecting a shared focus on financial security in a time of economic instability. And the shift towards short-term employment relationships weakened the emphasis on long-term career paths.
Also, I mean, it's easier to string you along if they already have you, because like change is scary, right? Like if you're like, hey, I want to raise, and your boss is like, you know what, we'll talk about it. Let's table it for 3 months. You know, let's get through this project we're working on. And then you get there 3 months later, and they're like, you know what, you've done pretty well. Let me go talk to my boss. Let me talk to HR. It's going to take a few weeks. And then they string you along for a couple more weeks. And now it's been what? From when you first asked, it's been 4 or 5 months. And they're like, you know what? We're coming up on our annual review here in a couple weeks. Let's talk about it at the annual review. And I think there's a good chance. And then you'll get to the annual review and they'll be like, you know what? You did well. You met expectations. Here's a 2% raise. And you're like, well, I needed more than that. And they're like, well, we gave you a raise. Like, you know, we can't really do much more than that. You know, you met expectations. You didn't really exceed expectations, right? And they'll be sure to make sure that even if you were exceeding expectations, to say you were meeting expectations, because they know if they say you exceeded it, then you're worth more. So like, because you've already started the conversation beforehand of wanting more money, they're going to say, oh, you're right where we want you, right? Instead of saying, oh, you're above. They've already baited you to stay for another 5 months, 1. And 2, now that they've got you and you've already committed all this extra time, you've already committed, what is it called? Like sunk cost fallacy. You've already put all this extra time in waiting for this raise. Now that they have you there, you finally got your raise, but it's not what you want. It's like, well, you already waited 5 months for it. So it's like, you weren't actually doing anything crazy. You were just doing what we wanted you to do. Maybe you were doing okay because you were actually just waiting for your raise instead of actually performing better than you expected, you know? And then at that point, they already got you. They got 6 months out of you without having to hire someone else. And they got 6 months out of you without having to pay you more. And you know how much that is? Let's say what? It's an extra $100 a week is what you were looking for. $400 a month. That's actually probably way too high. Let's say $50 a week, right? Let's say it was $50 a week. That is what you really wanted. And then So that's an extra $200 a month. And then you do that $200 a month over 6 months, right? So they got $1,200 out of you. And then on top of that too, you put that across the entire labor force of your company. Let's say your company has 1,000 employees and there's 100 of them that wanted raises and you string them along for 6 months. What's 1,200 times 100? 12,000? No. Yeah, so it is 120,000. Dude, my math skills are gone. I used to be very good at math, and then I got some really bad concussions in high school, and like I went from like calculus my like sophomore junior year to remedial math by senior year. It's really bad. Regardless, though, you see, like you saved so much money by doing that.
Simultaneously, globalization and
it's not illegal.
Emerged as a dominant cost-cutting strategy, further eroding traditional career life.
True, and then also like. Yeah, if your coworker leaves, it's like, oh, can you take on some of their responsibilities until we get someone new?
Matters.
And then you end up doing it for 6 months.
Increasingly scaled back long-term training programs, prioritizing cost efficiency and flexibility over employee development, leaving Generation X to navigate an environment shaped by fragmentation, heightened competition, and the growing demand for adaptability. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, grew up amid rising divorce rates and dual-income households, earning them the label latchkey kids. Societal shocks like the Challenger disaster, economic crisis, and political failures eroded their trust within institutions, reinforcing their focus on resilience and adaptability. While Gen Z is often criticized for seeking jobs that align with personal meaning, it was actually Gen X that first initiated this cultural shift. According to developmental psychologist Jeffrey Jensen Arnett, Gen Xers began prioritizing identity-driven careers in the 1990s tech boom, favoring roles that aligned with their passions and values over financial stability.
The whole, you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life.
Like technology and e-commerce, including their roles in the personal computing revolution and the rise of Silicon Valley, reshaped the global economy and set the stage for today's purpose-driven labor market. This shift also led to a greater demand for flexibility, with 50% of Gen Xers favoring remote work, surpassing both boomers and Gen Z. However, their loyalty to employers was entirely conditional, based on if their personal and professional needs were met, setting the foundation for the transactional nature of today's modern workforce. And by demanding both purpose and flexibility in their careers, Gen X reshaped workplace norms, paving the way for millennials to further amplify these trends. And before we break down the historical implications of the millennial generation, I am actively pushing and trying to get professors, politicians, economists, journalists.
You know, I thought this video was going to be pure rage bait. Yeah, I take it back. I don't think it is.
CEOs on the channel to help us break down some of these issues. If this video is providing any value to you, and
I think the title might have been rage bait.
I would greatly appreciate it if you like the video and subscribed if you haven't already done so. It truly does help when reaching out to these guests. Thank you all so much for your support. Millennials, born between
I think they titled it as rage bait to get people to click.
1981 and 1996, came of age during a period of rapid technological advancement and economic instability, with the Great Recession profoundly shaping their entry into adulthood. Raised by baby boomer and Gen X parents who emphasized structured parenting and achievement, millennials experienced highly organized childhoods filled with extracurricular activities and
clickbait titles are such an illness. They're actually kind of not, though. Because it gets people to maybe, like in this instance, it probably got people to click that are like, what the f is this guy saying? Like, what is this shit? And they click on it. And then they actually get to hear well-formulated, differing opinion from maybe their own, or the opposite, where they click on it and like they think they're going to agree with them. And then they're like, wait a minute. This isn't what I thought. Like this, they're not trashing the Gen Zs. What the f? They're not trashing them. I thought this was going to be trashing Gen Z. And then they get to hear another, again, well-formulated argument against their own belief, which is very difficult to get people to do, right? Because like people like to stay in their echo chambers.
By 2008, they were the most educated generation in history, with 70% pursuing higher education by the age of 25. Yet many graduated into a devastated job market, burdened with record student debt and underemployment. Nearly half accepted jobs unrelated to their degrees, delaying wealth accumulation and home ownership, resulting in millennials to reshape their approach to work, rejecting rigid hierarchies and their traditional pay-your-dues mindset. They prioritized flexibility, collaboration, and roles that aligned with personal values. Their team-orientated outlook, shaped by early exposure to social media and their structured childhoods, fostered innovation, but often clashed with the hierarchical preferences of older generations. leading to perceptions of entitlement
2008.
until none other than Gen Z emerged into the workforce. Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, entered adulthood in a labor market fundamentally transformed by systemic change and economic upheaval. Growing up immersed in social media, Gen Z has been exposed to curated success stories that amplify expectations for achievement while fueling anxiety
God, that's so fucking true.
about failure. Unlike previous
I'm gonna tell you guys a little story. When I grew up, those who don't know, I grew up pretty poor. My mom was a single mom, and I had a neighbor who we grew up with, and I thought we were good friends growing up until I started to get a little bit older, into like middle school, and I realized like, oh, he only likes being friends with me at home. He doesn't like being friends with me at school. Like, that's just who he is. So then we get to high school. We're not really like friends anymore. We still live across the street, but our parents were friends, and so I knew very well his economic story. And then we get into college, and I was struggling, right? Struggling hard. So I was really confused because I drove like my 98 Cadillac till the fucking thing fell apart. I would go out with friends, but a lot of times like I didn't have like a lot of money to go out to like to the bar or something like that. So like I'd get like the cheapest alcohol possible. And a lot of times it was like my friends and they didn't want it anymore because they got something else, right? My friends were really, really good about that. They also came from like really, really well-off families. So like they actually helped me out quite a bit. And I would see videos, like Instagram stories and posts of my neighbor traveling the world. In Vegas was a big one. In Vegas, doing probably a lot of drugs, partying clubs, like in like penthouse places. And I'm like, how the fuck is he doing all this? Like, how is he traveling all the time? I know for a fact that he does not have that economic means to do these things, right? And so I was really kind of down on myself of like, dude, I must be like doing something wrong. How the fuck is this? How is he doing it? I came to find out later on, years later, that he was like over $100,000 in credit card debt, and also took an extra 2 years to graduate school because was using school debt, taking loans for school to fund all of this. And I was like, what? It all makes sense now. You've got to have the tons of Instagram posts, and everyone thought he was so cool, and everyone thought that he was doing all these amazing things. And I realized that I knew multiple people that were like that, actually. I knew a lot of people that were like that. They would post videos at the beach in LA and at some like really nice house with a giant glass railing. You know what I'm talking about? On the beach, glass railing up somewhere. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? You probably picture it. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, holy shit, how did I not see it sooner? But I never thought about it. And it was something I always remembered being a couple steps behind everyone around me and thinking that I was doing really bad. And then I came to find out I was likely way ahead of all of them. The difference was I didn't go on social media and spread it all the time. But there's a lot of people that their entire personality is showing off how well they're doing on social media. That creates a cycle where people think, oh my God, these people are so successful. I want to be like them. Because like, who the fuck doesn't want to have a Ferrari? Well, maybe not Ferrari. Ferrari kind of sucks. Like, you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying, though, right? Like, who doesn't want to have a 12-car garage mansion house with fucking every car you could ever want, or travel the world? You know what I mean? Like, everyone wants that, right? Everyone fucking wants that on some level. Maybe not specifically that thing, right? And so you're like, how can I do it too? And so like, you follow these people and you don't even realize that like you're kind of fucking yourself, because you start thinking that these people are so successful and they must be doing things that you're not doing, and you should do what they do. But in reality, most of the time, they're just on massive debt and they're doing it for show. And it's horrible, because then you'll chase it. And either one of two things happens. You do the debt too, or you just feel really bad about yourself. Let's continue.
Generations, much of their understanding of workplace norms comes from fragmented online narratives rather than direct mentorship, leading to aspirations that often clash with labor market realities.
Family's the opposite. My dad makes bank, but he refuses to spend it. He could have a fancy car, so a big house. Doesn't like that stuff. He spoils my siblings and I, and his plans to retire in a small town farmer. I like your dad a lot. I like that a lot. I'm gonna make a small prediction, that your dad probably either is self-employed or built it on his own, and probably worked really fucking hard for it. Because I feel like that's what ends up happening in a lot of ways. Is the people that like put in like those 100-hour weeks consistently and either has their own business or helped build an insane business are those types of people, and they don't care about showing off. You know, they don't care. Like they just want to have a nice life. And that's it. That's all they want. But like there's also people that are like this. Like, and if you notice, most of them are young. Yep, grow up poor is fucking the most. Yeah, exactly. How old do you think the two people are in this video? I don't know who they are, right? It's like, do you really need a fucking Rolls Royce at 22? I'll give you another example. There was somebody who lived near my grandparents' house growing up, lived down the street. He owns this insane construction business. Like he does all the construction for like the entire state of Massachusetts. Fucking crazy. He's got a Rolls Royce. Never drove it. Drove it one time. He drove it a single time and it made him feel like he was a piece of shit. Because he felt like all of a sudden, like he looked like he was better than all of his friends. Like he doesn't want to pull into some place. Like he wants to go to the fucking local bar and get a burger. He's like pulling in a Rolls Royce and that like everyone's gonna stare at you the entire time. That's not who he is. He drove it a single time. You know what the next time it was driven was by like his son or grandson for prom. That was it. And I remember my dad was like kind of friends with them. My dad told me he was like he didn't regret buying it, but like he sort of regretted buying it because he knew he never wanted it. He was like, yeah, this was stupid. Like, it just got to the point where it's like, no, he wasn't even trying to flex. It was just like genuinely probably makes so much money that was like, what do I spend this on? And so he bought a car that is like super distinguished and super luxury. And it's like, this is what you're supposed to do with money. Cause like, that's like genuinely, what do you do? If you have $50 million in the bank, what do you do with that? Like genuinely, if I've asked you right now, like if you had everything paid for, you have your house, you have a fucking summer house, all your family members are all taken care of, right? Like, what do you do with that? It's like, I don't know, maybe I buy this insane car. And then you buy it and you go like, buy a politician. Okay, well, relax. Let's not get too real. You get what I'm saying? Like they just like, you're curious. You're like, I'll try it, right? I'll fucking try it. And I think that's what they ended up doing.
Entry-level positions,
I mean, I wouldn't know,
stepping
but
stone into professional life,
skins
now frequently require 3 to 5 years of experience. With
wait, I know this the Subway fucking sandwich maker guy. That guy's hilarious.
4% of these roles, including
I've only seen like 2 videos, but I know what they are.
Rising higher education costs and diminished vocational training have further narrowed pathways, leaving many Gen Z candidates burdened with debt and unprepared for the skills employers require. Federal investment in workplace development has also plummeted, falling from $69 billion when adjusted for inflation under the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act in 1979 to just $20 billion today, resulting in the societal expectation that Gen Z will just have the necessary skill sets when emerging into the workforce, when in all reality, all of the traditional avenues in obtaining those is practically impossible to come by. And unfortunately, the 2020 global crisis exacerbated these challenges. Remote education and work environments deprive Gen Z of opportunities to develop essential soft skills, such as communication, collaboration, and conflict resolution.
True. You know who's really though is Gen Alpha, apparently. Apparently it's real bad. The point where like they're years behind because of COVID. And even worse than that, it's like there's not a whole lot you can do. Especially like there's not a whole lot of money going into, oh god, that's a fucking depressing thought actually. Like there's not a whole lot of money going into education, it's actually losing it.
Relying heavily on digital communication, many now struggle with the nuanced interpersonal dynamics required in professional settings.
We also miss out on the networking when it comes to going to uni classes in campus. True. I always say this is like my biggest regret from college is not networking more and like sticking to myself too much. Like being like, you know, like mind my own business type of person, which is who I am. I think that college genuinely is way more about who you meet. Unfortunately, unless you're in like being a doctor or lawyer or something super specialized, maybe a scientist, it's more of who you know instead of what you know. And I can't tell you how many people that I knew that were absolute dumbasses, but they were charismatic and they had friends that like their parents worked at really, really good companies and they all got really, really high paying jobs out of college. And I could have got one too, actually. But I was stupid and I went into esports and I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form because now here we are today. And I think that pipeline probably is what kind of led to it. But it is scary to see that like I knew people that were really smart and they got like really shit jobs versus people that were really smart or really dumb.
Inability to adapt to work
that got really, really good ones.
Or engage in meaningful collaboration.
As a former law school student, I can assure you specialized fields are about who you know. Okay, that is also probably true, right? Because I'm assuming like if you go to a really nice school and you meet a lot of successful people, like sure, I'm sure there's like top law firms, right, that like recruit from those places, and you have like a friend that's like, oh, I know I met someone else that works at this really, really nice law firm, and they're looking for new hires. Let me put in a good word for you. You're probably absolutely correct. The only thing I meant to that is like you still have to have the skills. Like you're not going to get into like an insane law firm if you literally don't know how to practice law. I knew people that went to business school and they couldn't tell you the difference between macro and microeconomics that got like really high paying jobs at Fortune 500 companies right out of college. Yeah, that's all I was trying to say. I know what you mean, though. You're 100% right.
Mentorship has also declined, with 1 in 5 Gen Z workers reporting no conversations with colleagues over the age of 50 in the last year alone. And these factors have left Gen Z, frankly, ill-equipped to meet the growing demands of a labor market that offers fewer pathways for growth. And ironically, for those that do have the ability to communicate, dress professionally, show up on time, all the things that employers actually are wanting, well, that frankly no longer has any importance on a resume. It isn't the keywords that'll get you promoted on the LinkedIn platform, and likely...
Yo, I haven't been on LinkedIn in a long time, but didn't LinkedIn just kind of become like patting on your back simulator? And it's like not actually a useful platform anymore?
Isn't even something that a third-party recruiter or interviewer will even ask for. And with the hiring process increasingly being outsourced to third-party recruiters and automated systems,
it used to be useful like forever ago.
39% of hiring teams have actually received formal interview training. And this reliance on automated systems further just exacerbates the issue, as 75% of applications are excluded before ever being reviewed by a human, with 78% of hiring managers just predicting that AI will replace entry-level jobs altogether. Now, unlike hiring managers, employers, and recruiters that have just done everything in their power to give Gen Z the ability to thrive in the workforce and are unfortunately just having to resort to not hiring any recent
graduates. It's just professional Instagram
ads for 2025 because Gen Z in the entirety is just the worst generation to work with. Well, we now have the ability to understand the cultural, societal, and historical implications that have led us to this point. What I really wanted to get to the point of here is I wanted to show that all throughout history, patterns continuously repeat themselves.
We've played these games before.
At every emerging generation because
frankly,
it is the easiest thing to do. To hear them talk about...
Although I will say, I feel like that's changing. Maybe I haven't been alive long enough, but I remember as a kid not many people being angry at the silent generation or boomers, like early boomers, I guess at that point, or late boomers at that point, as they are now. Like, I feel like now it's way more like it's actually pointing upwards just as much as it points downwards now.
The work environment is not fair, that wages need to be better, that this and this and this and this. Well, one that makes you feel like, well, I mean, why didn't I talk about it? Yeah, it does kind of suck, but I've been dealing with it, so you should too. But it also makes you think,
car alarms going off.
These silly people, they don't even know how hard it used to be. Well, in reality, yeah, that's kind of the point of society. That's why you have kids. That's why you work, is to make it get a little...
Dude, you know what always pisses me off? You know what really genuinely irks me or grinds my gears? Whenever someone... Okay, let me give you an example. Remember the whole student loans thing and student loans were going to get paid off? Like they were going to get repaid? Like they were going to be forgiven? You know how many fuckers were like, well, what about me? I paid off my student loans. Congrats. You will be at the same level then. It's like, well, do I get money back? No, because you paid it off. It's like, well, if I had to pay off, why don't they? Well, hang on. Why do they have to live? You know how tough that was, right? Like you lived through it. It was ass, right? It was probably ass. It sucked. So like, why would you want someone else to have to go through that? That don't make no sense. Like, yeah, you suffered, but why would you want someone else to suffer because you suffered? That don't make no sense. The only time I want someone else to suffer when I suffered is if they caused me suffering. Then I'm fucking petty. Then I want you to suffer. I don't want some random person to ever have to suffer. But if you cause me suffering, yeah, fuck you. I'm doubling down. You're suffering worse than me now, bitch. Fuck you. You know what I mean? But like some random person, like why would I want that to happen? You know, like what did they do? They didn't do shit.
A little bit easier to have technological advancements make things a little bit
like
more...
the asshole that cuts you off on the freeway. I will say, this is going to sound terrible. I will say the fucking greatest thing about driving an absolute behemoth is my level of getting cut off has declined immensely. I don't get cut off almost at all anymore. It's great. It's so fun. You know how often I see someone swerve into my lane as I'm like driving up, and then they go, oh, and they just like, oh, and they just immediately pull back instantly. It never used to happen. It happens all the fucking time now. It's so fucking funny. And you know what it is? It's the fucking, it's the notorious ram lights, like the headlight lights, the shape, and then the 3 yellows in the middle. It is, for some reason, it scares people to death. And I know why, because people tailgate really hard and they drive like fucking assholes with it. I've seen it. But you know what is also very funny? There's like a weird hierarchical thing where other trucks respect you. It's weird. You always have those trucks that cut you off and drive like assholes. For some fucking reason, and I had this happen to me literally the other day. The other day, I'm just cruising in the left lane. It's a little bit of traffic, not much. And this fucking Silverado is literally going in left lane, then right lane, left lane. He's trying to like zip through. He's trying to like cut through traffic, trying to catch up. And then every fucking time he would cut through, and then he would get to the point where like he would have to come back into the left lane again. And it was me. I was the one he would have to cut off to go to the next one. And he would slow down and he would wait for me to go past him, and then he'd get behind me again. It happened 4 times. And you know what? On the 5th was when I was changing because I had to get off, and I watched him hard cut off the next car in front of me. Hard cut off. But he refused to cut me off. And it's not the first time it's happened. It's very weird. I don't know how to describe it. It's strange. You just have to believe me, okay? You just have to believe me. That's all.
Or convenience. But the reality is there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be things that people are going through, and their perspective on that is going to seem severe to them.
Sorry, that was a rant.
You have to come at them with compassion. But as a society, we don't have any idea on how to do that. So again, it's easier to place blame. So why do employers dislike Gen Z? It's easy. Now, if you want to get to some of the actual critiques, yeah, Gen Z don't have the ability to effectively communicate in the workforce. Okay, so what do we do about it? Yeah, let's just not hire any recent grads. What does that do? Does that help anybody? Will they now be able to have the communication skills needed in 2026? No. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
This is going to sound maybe unhinged, but I think one of the biggest shortfalls is the fact that small businesses aren't really a thing anymore. Anything beyond a restaurant, a bakery, a car wash, a gas station, small, very small things, like small convenience things don't exist. Like they're gone. Like even dealerships are mostly conglomerates of dealerships at this point. Everything's a franchise of a big restaurant. Everything is either manufactured elsewhere and then sold at big box stores or bought online. And as somebody who has multiple people that works for them, I have my whole editing team, I have retro crap. How many times do you think retro's fucked up with like stuff with me, right? Like it's endless, right? The reason why we always get through it is because like we can go, okay, this didn't work. Let's do this in the future. You can't do that on the scale of this. Like when you have a franchises and you have all this other stuff. What ends up happening is they either just get instantly fired if it's too big of a mistake, or the mistake doesn't get corrected, and then the company declines until they get to the point where like they have to lay people off, or it's like, the experience gets so bad for customers and customers don't want to show up anymore. And so because you don't have that closer relationship or those smaller groups, you can't actually give them those skills. And so everyone just kind of wings it until they figure it out. Like I feel like it's rare to have an actual hands-on manager that actually is helpful to you, other than someone who just like schedules your time, and then if you don't get a good scheduled time, they just blame you for it. Or it's like a corporate manager who just like checks in every week and go, what have you done this week? And then you tell them what they've done, and then you show up to a couple meetings and a couple emails, and then no one does anything. It's kind of sad.
What you do is you create an environment with respect on both sides and start doing some training.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make, is like training and growing. It's not just about growing the business, it's like growing the workers too. Like, you know how much easier it is to have somebody who's like been with you for 5 years and like knows all your ins and outs than someone who's brand new. Like if you're some brand new person, like they're not gonna know shit. Like even if they're experienced, even if they're good at their job. Like I used to have somebody that worked with me who was a data analyst, a professional data analyst. He wanted to get into gaming stuff forever ago. So he was helping me with YouTube stuff completely just because he like wanted to get into it. Even though he's the smartest guy with all this data stuff, holy did he not understand like half the things we were doing for like why we did them, like why we did spectating, like when we did spectating, why we only did it once a week. You know what I mean? It's like, why wouldn't you do this every day if it performs so well? Well, yeah, you're gonna burn people out on it. You can't do fucking spectating 7 days a week. Then like it gets boring. It's not as fun. It loses its charm. It loses its luster. You have to also enjoy it, like what you're doing. That stuff doesn't show up in data. And then within a year was perfect, like knew everything, was great. I would rather retain that person over the next couple of years than have to find someone new every year, you know?
Some managing, doing some mentorship to instruct, hey, this is how you communicate. Yeah, I know that you like to do this, but this is how we're going to do it. Find a middle ground. Listen to what it is that they're actually trying to say. And I am not just trying to say Gen Z are victims or anything like that. I'm trying to do a fair approach to say that what is happening is absolutely just ludicrous. The fact that for the past century, each generation is just doing this, saying, hey, maybe we should have better wages, a better work environment, a blah, 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 blah. And then the generation is, you're lazy, you're entitled, you're not
so
loyal.
True.
If back in my day, so this just continuously happens for all eternity.
My favorite though about that is like, they'll say like McDonald's isn't like a, you know, like McDonald's isn't a real job. Who should work it then? High schoolers. You ever gone to McDonald's at 1 p.m.? Who's supposed to be there? You ever gone for breakfast? Who's supposed to be there? High schoolers. They're in school that time. What about late night? You ever gotten home drunk from the bar, 1 a.m. and you want some McDonald's? You order it for DoorDash? Who's working there? You have labor loss. Those high school kids can't work that late. Who's going to work it? Oh, you didn't think that far?
Now, what is happening over here? Well, it's the very thing that you're arguing about. It's wages. It's fulfillment in the work environment. It's collaboration. It's you name it. So what is happening? Has wages gotten better?
People who just got out of high school? Okay, even if it is what people just got out of high school, right? So you're talking about people who are of the age of 18, legal adults that are supposed to live on their own. Can you sustain yourself on a full-time McDonald's job and have your own place to rent? Even with a roommate, food, you live in America, car, gas, car insurance? Probably not. Guaranteed not. Not probably. Unless, no, guaranteed not. I'm gonna stand on that. Guaranteed. I was gonna say maybe like in a rural area, but actually in a rural area, you're probably still under federal minimum wage. I live in Massachusetts. Minimum wage here is like, did it go up again? It was $15 for a while, which is crazy. You know what's funny? Dude, when I was working for Uprising in Overwatch League, I made $15 an hour. Do you know how many years ago that was? That was 6 years ago. I started streaming 5 years ago, 2020. So 6 years ago, I was making what now is considered the minimum wage in my state. Isn't that fucking insane?
Anything in the work culture gotten better in the last century?
Surely the main aspiration would be go to university after high school, though. So the problem for work is still applies. My own personal opinion is one of the worst thing that's ever happened to our entire country is the shaming of trades and the shaming of low skill work. Everyone wants to go to college, right? But like, who's going to work all these other jobs? You know, like someone has to. One of my friends, my best friend growing up, my former roommate, he went to college with me, not the same school. We went to a college and he was fucking horrible. He was just not good at it. But he worked for his dad at a company as a mechanic. Like he was like a assistant, right? What he ended up learning there was, holy shit, I should go to school for this. So he ended up going to trade school instead. And now he makes 3 times the money he was going to probably make for going to college. He has a good work-life balance. And his job is in such demand, and he makes fucking good money now. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue, right, that a trade is an education. You're not wrong. But even still at that point, now you're talking they're paying for the trade, right? Like, how are you going to even get money to go to the school, right? Considering that getting loan stuff is about to become more difficult. Things change so fast. It's like, well, hang on. Is this even outdated information anymore? Because like, yeah, like you'd have to get a loan for that. It's like, well, actually, can you get a loan right now? Like a federal loan? I don't know if you can. So there's a lot of things you do. There's a lot of things to consider at that point. You know, should you, if you work 40 hours a week at McDonald's and go to trade school, should you be able to have a living wage? I mean, probably, yeah. I think so. You Be able to at least get by. But if everyone also goes to higher education, it's like there's not always enough jobs there. You know, like I remember just 4 or 5 years ago, everyone said go into IT, go into tech. Like people, they need software engineers like crazy. And now all these people that are probably graduating right now are going to get slapped in the fucking head with AI and probably are having a hard time finding jobs, you know? And it's like, shit, how do you know which one to choose? You know what I mean? Especially at 18.
There's definitely, if you really nitpick, you're going to find something. But the reality is that what if instead of us arguing, we focused on the issue? But no, them dang Gen Zers. Now, I will say, I just turned 25, so I am a Gen Zer.
What?
Impossible for me not to have some bias, but I will say, some of the worst people I have worked with were Gen Z. Now, was that because they were Gen Z? Or was that because they just didn't fit in the culture that we had? Was that just because I didn't have the patience to actually listen to what they were saying? There's so many other components. I will also say some of the most frustrating people that I've ever worked with were Gen Xers, were millennials that just, I couldn't understand. So what is the common similarity among these? It's me. I am the one that needs to be making the decisions on
Here's
how
the real
I
answer.
handle these
You
interactions.
can't be a blanket
If you
statement.
are a hiring manager, an employer, a recruiter, your responsibility is to find the best candidate. So if people are coming in that are not effective, it's your fault. It's not the generation's fault. Again, placing blame. It doesn't do anything effective. What I want to just also highlight, because I think it's interesting, is when you look at boomers, we think of boomers. In reality, there was multiple different types of boomers based on their parents, which then slowly trickled down to other components. Now, I just turned 25. My parents are the oldest Gen X, the youngest boomers, and their parents were the silent generation. When I look at myself, this analysis gave me so much clarification because the way that I was raised and the way that I hold myself in the workforce is of efficiency, is of discipline, of hard work, of impacting the providing value to my surroundings. That is all it is that I want to do.
Which one are you? Because I was the go-getter. I was always the, we can make this better. And you and Craft and Retro are sitting lurking right now, know that this still exists to this day. It's why I'm here now. I have, that one's a little better, but not really. And you know what's funny though? When you are that type, if you are the hyper go-getter, the hyper, like, we can make this better, you can step on some toes with that one really hard. Because like, okay, I mean, fuck it. I've told this story before. One of the homestands we're going to run for Uprising, like Overwatch League stuff, they wanted to host it outside in Boston on the water at the end of July. And I was like, we're going to do an esports event outside in July in Boston? It's going to be like 90 degrees with a humidity of 110%. Like, what? Everyone's going to be sticking. Like, what? That's just awful. And they were going to do it. I was like, this is just such an ass idea. And so I went to like a bunch of other like of the executives and I was like, guys, this is fucking horrible. Like, what are we doing? They turned it around, ended up going to Overwatch League and being like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? And they were like, absolutely fucking not. Where did you guys come up with that? And the person who came up with the idea was the head of, the complete head of marketing for the entire KSE Craft group. And I put a giant target on my ass because you have like the executive who's been there for 30 years just got absolutely fucking cooked by the guy who's been here for 6 months, you know? So that didn't go well. That was not my best call. Objectively, I was correct. I was objectively doing what was best for the fans, doing best for the players, doing best for the league, at the expense of somebody in power who didn't like being challenged. That made my time there a lot more difficult after that. And I felt it. And so if you're that type of like, I want to make things better, and you always push for the things to be better, even if you are objectively correct, you're not falling in line. You're not following the rules. And that's always who I've been. And it's funny, I was talking with someone semi-recently about this, about like school, right? Like, if you are the type, let me know if you agree with this, if you're the type who like always wanted to get good grades, wanted to get an A's, praised by the teacher, like always showed up to participating in class and did well, you probably don't understand my point of view, which is I showed up to learn, and I also, but like actually learn, but also like I didn't do well with like the power trip professors, like the ones that would like, when you got in those classes and you're like, oh, like this guy's a little bit aggressive, like he's a little bit, his way or no way, but that's okay. I'll get around it by just doing what he wants, right? I was the person who showed up and was like, whoa, hey, that's kind of weird, bro. Hey, that's kind of strange. Like, I know this is your thing, but like, why are you like that? Like, don't do that. If you're one of those people that just kind of always fell in line, you always were able to get through it no matter what, even if it wasn't your favorite class or favorite whatever. My version of being like, the fuck's wrong with you? Probably like horrified you. It depends on like how you looked at things. And you can even look at it in this. It's like, there's going to probably be certain jobs or certain fields that you just won't do well in. Cause like, if you're not in business, like if you're in business field, you need to be kind of charismatic. You have to know where your place is. You have to know, sometimes you have to just keep your mouth shut, even if you're right, and you will succeed and you will climb. But if you're a creative, sometimes you got to be out there. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more almost in your face, because that's how you survive,
It's the same across the board with my closest friends. Now, when I look at some of those...
Okay, yeah, if you go into accounting, that's different. But like, we're talking marketing, we're talking management, we're talking finance. You know what I mean?
Outside friends, some acquaintances that are a little bit younger, the Gen X parents, they very much prioritize work-life balance. No big deal. That's totally fine. Just different than the way that I operate.
That was me
my
too,
life.
Lou.
Then when I look at the younger Gen Z, raised by millennials, they are very much prioritizing emotional well-being and all these other components. Again, not saying anything different. But when we paint each generation as Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, blah, 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 you're missing so many components rich with other information. We are living in a society that is being plagued by convenience and the inability as a society to have any discussion. We want to blame Gen Zs for the inability to be able to communicate in the workforce. Hey, as a society, we have no ability to communicate. That's just facts. You will see that even after this video, in the comment section below will be, yeah, Gen Zs are still lazy. I guarantee you, you're going to see one of those. Or, yeah, boomers still suck. It's going to happen. Nothing we're going to do about it. But what we can do is we can focus on ourselves and how we're going to handle each situation. And I do apologize that this stigma also happens to the boomers and the Gen X's that are getting fired and no longer able to get hired by somebody else, because the recruiters, the employers, the hiring managers get to dictate whatever it is that they want to do. And
also, they probably aren't used to the whole, like, I don't think, okay, like realistically, you know how like it used to be a thing, like it used to be like a meme where it was like your boomer grandparents or parents would be like, oh, go down and shake our hand and look them in the eye and ask them for a job. Like, everyone knows now, like, that's not going to happen, right? Like, everyone's moved past it. But for a while, that actually did hold some merit. Like, there were people who did think that. That's not like a thing anymore. I think everyone's kind of woken up to that. At the same time, though, I think that if you have a parent or grandparent that lost their job in the last few years, you probably saw their demeanor switch pretty heavily on the job, on how job market stuff worked. And if you have a parent or grandparent that has not lost their job within the last few years, they probably are a lot more of the original ideology of like, it's not that hard.
And all we do is we focus on this. Imagine if we focused on...
That's how I got my first job. I walked to the head greenskeeper and asked him for a job. Retro, no fucking offense, you were in North goddamn Dakota. There was like 15 people to choose from.
On the issue.
In the whole town.
Anywho, I hope this video was able to provide some value. I thought that this is the path we needed to pursue this conversation.
You ain't wrong!
I think it's really interesting that we don't talk about the interconnected dynamics of generations more. And yeah, the audacity for me to say what life was like for boomers and for Gen X. If I got some of it wrong, I'm definitely sorry. Please let me know in the comment section below. The reality, I'm just having to read through so many different articles, so many different newspapers, magazines, just spending so much time studying because, well, frankly, it's hard to communicate with other generations. but I hope that I was able to provide some value. Thank you all so much for your time. Let's just keep moving forward. Let's keep doing the best that we can. Until next time, bye-bye.
It was actually a really good video. I thought this was going to be a rage bait video from the title. I remember old people used to say children of the future when I was young. I haven't heard anyone say that in a very long time now. Wait, that's actually so real. I'm going to add on this. I remember when people used to say that Gen Z was going to change the world. I remember people said that Gen Z was going to lead a revolution and was going to change the world. And I don't think it was the way we are now. I think they did. It just wasn't the way people expected. Very good video, though. Very, very good.